There's a question that many women quietly carry in their hearts, especially after 50. They may not speak out loud, but it lingers in quiet moments, in long evenings, in the spaces between what was and what might still be. Is it too late for love? After years of caring for others, navigating heartbreak, or simply adjusting to life alone, the thought of falling in love again can feel almost distant. Like a door you once passed through, now far behind you. You might look around and think, love is for the young. Dating at this age is complicated. Who would even want someone my age, with my past, with my wrinkles, with my life already halfway lived? These thoughts aren't superficial. They come from experience, from memories, from fear. And they come wrapped in silence because few people talk about love after 50 with the seriousness and dignity it deserves. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist, believed that the second half of life is not a decline, but a transformation. He wrote, "We cannot live the afternoon of life according to the program of life's morning." In other words, the way we loved at 20 or 30 will not, and should not, be the way we love at 60. But love itself, it doesn't expire. It evolves. That question, is it too late, is not really about age. It's about permission. Permission to feel again, to hope again, to be open again, not just to another person, but to your own capacity to give and receive affection. Many women in their 50s, 60s, and beyond have spent years in roles of service, raising children, supporting a partner, caring for aging parents. Their days were filled with giving. Their identity was shaped by responsibility. And when those roles shift, through divorce, widowhood, or time, something unfamiliar appears: space. Space for yourself. Space for longing. Space for the possibility of connection. And that's when the question begins to echo. But love now is different. At this stage, love isn't about building a life from scratch. It's not about ticking boxes, pleasing others, or proving your worth. It's about presence, depth, choosing someone not to complete you, but to meet you as you are. Sophia, 63, described it this way: "I spent my whole life being someone's daughter, wife, mother, friend. And then suddenly it was quiet. For the first time, I heard myself wondering, could someone love me now, not for what I do, but for who I am? That scared me more than I expected." This fear is natural. It's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of self-awareness. And this is where Jung's teachings speak so clearly. He believed that after midlife, we are called inward, to look at our inner world, to reconcile who we have been with who we still are. And part of that process is recognizing the parts of ourselves we've placed on hold: joy, playfulness, desire, intimacy. You haven't outgrown those things. You may have just buried them under duty and time. Now, love asks a different question. Not, who do I need to be for someone to want me, but who am I now, and who do I want to share that with? So is it too late? No, it is not too late, but it is different. And perhaps that's the gift. You are not the same woman you were at 25. You've lived. You've endured. You've grown wise. You've learned what you won't tolerate and what your heart truly needs. Love after 50 doesn't rush. It doesn't perform. It doesn't settle. It seeks something real. It begins not with attraction, but with recognition. It often starts with a conversation, a quiet moment, a sense of being seen. And yet, even now, you may hesitate. You may ask, what if I get hurt again? What if I'm alone forever? What if I open myself and there's no one there? These questions are brave. They come from a heart that still feels, still dreams. The answer is not in erasing those fears, but in moving with them, gently, slowly, consciously. You are allowed to want companionship. You are allowed to feel desire. You are allowed to hope for tenderness. This is not a weakness. It is a sign of life. And if the world around you doesn't talk about love after 50, then let this space be a quiet rebellion. A reminder that your heart doesn't follow the calendar. As Jung might say, the soul does not age. It grows deeper. So no, it is not too late. It may be the first time you're finally ready. Sometimes it's not the present that holds us back from love. It's the past. A divorce that left you feeling discarded. A long marriage where love faded into silence. A betrayal that shook your trust to the core. Or simply years of not being seen, not fully, not deeply. These are not small things. They leave traces. Invisible but powerful. They shape how we move forward, even if we don't realize it. And when someone asks, why haven't you dated again? Or don't you want companionship? The answer is not just about age or options. Often, it's about protection. About what we learn to guard, to avoid, to keep quiet. Carl Jung spoke of the shadow, the parts of ourselves that we hide, even from ourselves. Not because they're bad, but because they're painful. And often, those shadows are filled with stories of love gone wrong. They whisper, don't trust too quickly. Don't hope too much. You're better off alone. These voices are not your enemies. They are parts of you trying to keep you safe. But safety and fulfillment are not always the same. Safety keeps us from being hurt. But sometimes, it also keeps us from being alive. Let's be honest, loving again is not just about meeting someone new. It's about becoming someone new, or more precisely, becoming someone whole. Someone who can hold the past without being held back by it. Sophia, who we met earlier, once said, I wasn't afraid of dating. I was afraid of becoming vulnerable again. Of opening myself to someone who might disappoint me, or worse, disappear. This fear is valid. Especially if you've known what it feels like to be left emotionally starving in a relationship where you gave everything. But here's the truth, those wounds need air to heal. Not constant exposure, but conscious attention. Avoiding love forever doesn't mean you're healed. It often means you're stuck. So, how do you begin to move again? Gently, wisely, without rushing? Start by naming what hurt you. Write it down. Speak it aloud. Tell a trusted friend. Not to relive the pain, but to stop carrying it alone. Say, I was loyal to someone who didn't see me. I stayed longer than I should have because I thought love meant sacrifice. I lost parts of myself trying to keep something that was already gone. Jung believed that what we don't make conscious will rule our lives. By naming your story, you begin to take your power back. Next, ask, what did I learn? This is where healing begins. Not in blaming yourself or others, but in understanding what the experience taught you. For example, I need to be heard, not just needed. I deserve tenderness, not just duty. I am not here to fix, to chase, or to shrink. These are not just lessons. They are the foundations of how you will love going forward. Then ask, what do I fear now? Not every fear needs to be overcome immediately, but every fear deserves to be met with kindness. You might write, I fear giving my heart to someone who will waste it. I fear being judged for wanting intimacy again. I fear being alone forever, and I also fear depending on someone. You're allowed to feel all of this. And this is where another Jungian truth appears, individuation, the journey of becoming fully yourself. Loving again is not about finding someone to erase your past. It's about meeting someone from the strength of who you are now. You are not starting over as a blank slate. You are starting again as a whole woman. And that changes everything. Because now you can bring your wisdom to love, not your wounds. You can say, this is who I am. This is what I value. This is how I love, and what I need in return. You can love without losing yourself. And if someone cannot meet you there, you walk away, not because you're afraid, but because you know your worth. One woman, Anna, 61, described her turning point. For years, I avoided love. I told myself I was fine alone. But deep down, I wasn't. I was just tired being disappointed. Then one day, I realized I had never actually loved with my eyes fully open. I had loved with hope, with illusion. This time, I would love with truth. Truth is what you deserve now. Not the fantasy of perfection. Not the fear of rejection. But the truth that you are lovable, exactly as you are. So no, it is not too late. But it's not the same. And that's the beauty. Now, you love differently. From depth. With presence. Without masks. And that kind of love, slow, real, rooted in self-awareness, is not just possible after 50. It may be more possible than ever before. Love after 50 is different. And that's not something to fear, it's something to honor. In your younger years, love may have come with urgency. The clock was ticking, build a family, settle down, make it work. There were roles to fill, expectations to meet. You loved with dreams, with plans, with a quiet pressure to belong. But now, the timeline is gone. The pressure fades. What remains is something far more precious, the chance to love not from need, but from choice. Carl Jung spoke of the second half of life as a time not of ambition, but of integration, a return to the self. Love, then, becomes less about completing your life, and more about enriching it. So, how does love actually change after 50? First, there's more honesty. You are no longer trying to prove who you are. You've already lived enough to know what matters, and what doesn't. You no longer perform to be loved. You show up as yourself, expecting the same in return. This is not arrogance. It's clarity. You may now say, this is what I value. This is what I need. This is what I will not accept. And in doing so, you create a space where love can breathe, without confusion, without games. Second, love slows down. And that's a gift. There's no rush to impress. You can take your time getting to know someone, not just their stories, but their energy, their presence, how they make you feel when no one is trying. Dating now becomes less about attraction alone and more about compatibility. You ask questions like, can we talk about real things? Can we sit in silence and still feel connected? Do we respect each other's independence? In this stage of life, the heart seeks peace, not just passion. And when peace and passion come together, that's where intimacy deepens. Third, the fear of judgment begins to soften. Of course, there are moments of insecurity. You may wonder, will they think I'm too old? What about my wrinkles, my story, my history? But you've also lived through enough to know the right person isn't looking for a perfect body or a spotless past. They're looking for presence, depth, and emotional honesty. You now understand that real love sees beyond the surface. It sees resilience, kindness, humor, wisdom. And when you love from this place, you no longer shrink to fit someone's expectations. You stand tall in who you've become. Fourth, the focus shifts from building a future to sharing the present. You may no longer be planning for children or building a shared career. Instead, love becomes about everyday moments. Sharing a morning coffee, walking side by side in the evening, laughing over a quiet dinner. It becomes about companionship, not construction. And this makes room for a gentler kind of romance, one that isn't about performance, but about presence. Anna, 62, said it best, when I was younger, love meant doing everything together. Now, love means we both have space and still choose to come home to each other. Fifth, love becomes less about fixing and more about accepting. In your younger years, you may have tried to change or save a partner. Now, you know that's not your role. You've learned that everyone carries their own story, their own wounds. And if you are to walk together, it's not to erase those things, but to walk with them, gently, honestly. You no longer chase potential. You seek presence. Carl Jung once wrote, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. Love after 50 is not about losing yourself in another. It's about transforming together, slowly, with awareness. How to embrace this new form of love. Redefine what love means to you now. Ask yourself, what kind of relationship do I want? What kind of energy do I want to bring and receive? Let go of outdated ideals. You don't need someone to complete you. You're already whole. Love now becomes about companionship, not dependency. Be open to new beginnings without rushing. Whether it's meeting someone new or deepening an existing bond, let it unfold. Real intimacy cannot be forced, but must be welcomed. Protect your peace. Love that brings anxiety, confusion, or emotional chaos is not aligned with where you are now. You've earned peace. Don't trade it for potential. Stay rooted in yourself. Keep nurturing your own passions, friendships, and solitude. The right relationship will not interrupt this. It will honor it. A final thought. Love after 50 is not a lesser version. It's a refined one, a wiser one, a more grounded, spacious, and deeply satisfying one. It asks less for perfection and more for presence, less for passion without substance and more for warmth with honesty. It invites you to bring your full self, your laugh lines, your scars, your stories, and to say, this is me. If we walk together, let it be with care. And that truly is not just possible. It might be the richest love of all. Some people fear being alone. Others choose it and thrive. But for many women after 50, solitude is not just a circumstance. It becomes a space filled with quiet questions. Is this what my life will look like now? Am I alone because I want to be, or because I'm afraid to try again? Is this freedom, or is it just silence? The answers aren't simple, but they begin with honesty. There's a difference between enjoying your own company and hiding from connection. There's a difference between choosing solitude and quietly grieving the absence of love. Carl Jung believed that the second half of life is a time for returning to the self. He saw individuation, the process of becoming whole, as life's true task. And that path often begins in solitude. But solitude is not the same as loneliness. Loneliness feels empty. Solitude feels full. Loneliness whispers, no one wants me. Solitude says, I enjoy my own presence, and I'm open to more. If you've been alone for a long time, you may have created a life that works, your rhythm, your routines, your peace. And that's powerful. But sometimes, without realizing it, that peace becomes a wall, a shield, a quiet refusal to feel disappointment again. You might tell yourself, I'm fine alone. And you are. You've made it this far after all. You're independent, self-aware, capable. But deep inside, there may still be a longing, not for chaos, not for codependence, but for connection. For someone to share your morning coffee. For someone to say, I'm here. For someone to laugh with when the world feels too quiet. That longing doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. The question is, are you open to it? Only you can answer that. And the answer can shift over time. One woman, Lucia, 67, lived alone for over a decade after a painful divorce. She created a beautiful life. Garden, books, long walks, friends. But one day, she said, I realized I wasn't choosing solitude anymore. I was just afraid of being disappointed again. So I stayed safe but small. That realization didn't lead her to rush into anything. But it helped her open a door, a small, quiet door to the possibility of sharing her peace with someone else. The choice to love again after 50 is not a rejection of solitude. It's an extension of it. It says, I know who I am. I've come home to myself. And now I wonder if someone might meet me here, not to complete me, but to walk beside me. And if no one comes, then your life is still full. Because you are not living in waiting, you're living in wholeness. The danger is not in being alone. The danger is in building a life around avoidance. You might avoid disappointment, yes. But you also avoid surprise, laughter, intimacy, renewal. Jung would remind us that the self is vast, and that the soul desires connection, not to be fixed but to be mirrored. So ask yourself, do I feel free in my solitude, or simply protected? Do I feel peace in my days, or have I stopped expecting more? Do I want love to return, or am I just afraid of being forgotten? These are not questions to rush. Sit with them. Listen gently. And then, if the answer begins to lean toward connection, take a step. A small one. Not toward someone else, but toward yourself. Acknowledge the part of you that still wants to be held. The part that still wants to laugh. The part that still believes a new kind of love is possible, not despite your age, but because of it. Because now, you're no longer seeking someone to fill a gap. You're inviting someone into your garden, one you've tended, protected, and learned to enjoy. If no one enters, the garden still grows. But if someone kind walks in, you'll know how to welcome them, with calm, with joy, and with no need to lose yourself. That's the difference between loneliness and freedom. One traps you in fear. The other reminds you, you were never incomplete. You are whole. And love, when it comes, is simply a companion to your wholeness. There's something beautiful about love that comes later in life. It's not loud. It doesn't rush. It doesn't need to prove itself. It simply arrives when it's ready, when you're ready, like a gentle wave that touches what's been quieting you for a long time. After 50, love is no longer about fantasy. It's about truth. And the truth is, you are still capable of deep feeling. You are still open, still longing, not out of emptiness, but because the soul never stops reaching for connection. Carl Jung believed the soul moves not toward perfection, but toward wholeness. And love is one of the most profound expressions of that movement. Not just romantic love, but love in all its forms: affection, presence, touch, companionship, mutual care. At this stage of life, love is not about escape. It's not a rescue. It's not the answer to a missing piece. It's a celebration. A meeting between two people who know what it means to lose and still choose to open again. A woman once said, I didn't fall in love at 64 because I was lonely. I fell in love because my heart finally had space, and I met someone who didn't fill it but honored it. That is the kind of love worth waiting for, and the kind you are worthy of. You are not too old. You are not late. You are on time in your own time. And if love hasn't come yet, it doesn't mean it won't, or that you failed, or that it's over. It simply means your story is still unfolding. You've spent decades learning, growing, healing. You've done the work. You've endured silence, rebuilt from loss, stood alone when it was hard. All of this has made you more tender, more clear, more honest. Now, if love enters your life, it enters differently. It's not about forever. It's about presence. It's not about changing someone. It's about meeting someone fully. It's not about doing everything together. It's about choosing to walk side by side with space and respect. Some women fall in love again in their 50s. Others in their 70s. Some never fall. They grow into it slowly, over coffee, over years, over quiet exchanges that deepen into something meaningful. There is no right way. No perfect script. The only question that matters is this: are you still open? Not desperate. Not searching. Just open. Because that openness, soft, clear, steady, is what invites love in. Jung once wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And perhaps love at this stage begins exactly there, in the quiet courage to be who you are, without apology. You no longer need someone to complete you, but you may welcome someone who compliments you. You no longer need someone to save you, but you may open the door to someone who walks with you. That is love after 50, less drama, more depth. Less noise, more honesty. Less proving, more presence. So if that question still lingers, is it too late? Let this be your answer. No, not if your heart still feels. Not if your soul still stirs at the thought of connection. Not if you still believe that life, even now, still has more to give. Love may not come as it once did, but when it comes, it will meet you where you are, not who you were. And that in itself is a kind of miracle. You haven't missed your chance. You've only begun to understand what love can really be.